So we got, different scenarios here. You
Yep.
got daily driving, you got towing, you got off-roading. So let's start with daily driving. What do you run for air pressure in your tires? Does it vary front to back? Do you run even on all four corners?
Yeah, it actually does vary from front to back. So from factory, and if you were to run the factory tire, the recommended air pressure is 55 in the front and 45 in the rear. But
55 in the front and
Yeah.
45 in the rear?
Yeah, and that's from factory. You find that on the placard on the door. I mean, I was just as surprised as you are
that's awesome.
because that's a lot of.
Because my truck is 40 in the front and 55 in the rear when loaded, but it's 40 all the way around on normal driving.
And I mean, I don't know exactly why Ram would come out with such high PSIs for, factory, but
But hey, those engineers determine that that's the pressure you need. So we always recommend staying with that.
so that's with stock though. So since these are bigger tires, they're taller tires, right? They're basically the same width, but they are a little bit taller than the
Right.
stocks, obviously. I went on tire size to identify what pressure I should be running. Also confirmed it with our own QA and warranty team to make sure that you trust but verify, kind of one of those things, and they kind of came to the same conclusion. So rather than running 55-45, I'm actually running 5 psi less than what's recommended from factory because of the bigger tire size. So it's 49 and 39.
Right. So to build on that, the volume of air is what supports the load, right?
Mhm.
So the larger tire has a larger volume of air, so it's able to support the same load but with less pressure because of the increased volume. And as Eusebio said, tiresize.com is an excellent place to figure out all these things. You can plug in your stock tire size, stock pressures, new tire size, and it'll calculate the pressures for
Right.
you. It'll tell you the new revolutions per mile and how that's going to vary from going to that taller tire. Did you recalibrate your speedometer or anything?
No, that's on my to-do list. My understanding is it's probably off by 3 to 4 miles per hour
If
based
I had
off
to
of the
guess,
size.
it's probably
so-
more accurate now because I found that manufacturers seem to err on the side of caution.
Ah,
And then once you kind of like go up to slightly larger tire, it's kind of like, oh, now when you drive past that little radar thing, it's like, hey, these kind of line up better.
yeah.
So might not even have been necessary. But now, okay, so now we've covered daily driving.
Yep.
Towing's a different scenario. When you're towing,
Right.
you got a lot more weight back here.
Yep.
Whether it's in the bed, I mean, even in the bed, if you had a lot of weight in the bed, you would want to revisit that tire pressure. But you've got a lot of weight just sitting on the rear end here on the hitch. So what did you determine is your best pressure for towing, front and rear?
So, mind you, these tires have a max PSI of 80, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So, in the front, when I'm towing the toy hauler at full max capacity, which is about 8,500 pounds, I load up the back tire to 60 to 65. And then I'll load up the fronts to 60 as well. That's what I found to feel more stable as I'm going through the road, especially on the uphills, cornering curves and things like that.
So that wasn't an exact calculation you were able to come by. This was kind of more of a trial and error kind of thing.
Yeah. So if I wouldn't air up at all, you would actually kind of see the tire itself start to come down a little bit if I were to leave it at its stock pressure at 45, because it's a lot of weight that's coming down onto that tongue, right? So there's 8,500 that you're towing. I mean, there's roughly 850 to 900 pounds that are going straight onto that rear axle as well. And what I found to more from a comfort and how I feel the truck as it's rolling, eventually just kind of playing with it and airing up, reaching the gas station, checking the pressures again. And then if I load up to 60, when I drop all the weight onto that tongue, it actually reads more like 65 because that weight kind of starts to get applied onto the tire itself. So from 60, it actually moves up to 65. And then since it's actually taking some of the pressure off of the front because you're kind of distributing the weight to the back, that ends up staying more towards that 60 to 59 range by leaving that.
Okay, so when you're rolling down the road, you're watching the pressure on your dash, and you're seeing kind of as they heat up a little bit, you're seeing that increase, right? Okay, that's good to know. But again, that's a really good thing to take into consideration, which is why Eusebio chose this tire, because of the load range E rating I probably just messed that up. Because of the load range E rating, he's able to increase to that, up to that 80 psi. If he was running a load range D or even a load range C tire, load range C, I believe, maxes out at 50 psi.
Yep.
D at 60 or 65, somewhere around there. But anyway, that wouldn't have met your needs.
Correct.
You needed that load range E,
Yeah.
what some people call a 10-ply tire, mainly for doing what you do. Now off-road. Off-road's a little different. We know you want to air down. Airing down off-road does a couple of things. It helps absorb the shocks of the trail. Any bumps, imperfections of the trail, it acts like additional suspension, makes the ride more comfortable. It also increases contact patch a little bit by making it wider, but really what it does is it makes the tire longer.
Yeah.
So it almost makes it more like a track, like a tank track or a snowmobile track, the lower you go.
Right.
You'd have to get pretty low to visibly see a difference, but it helps.
Yeah.
Even as little as 5 psi in certain situations can help. So off-roading, what do you air down to?
So I don't do any hardcore off-road on this truck, right? It's a half-ton truck that I now use mostly to get the true off-road cars to off-road. But when I do, I don't go anywhere below 25 psi. There's the car at work actually showed me a chart that kind of shows that as your psi decreases, the amount of weight and load that tire can sustain decreases with it.
Yeah.
Also why I air up to 60, right? Because you kind of have to follow that trend. And the pattern to how much weight it can hold. So with the truck of this size and of this weight, then anything below 25, and especially not having a beadlock wheel on it, you're really pushing the limit to it. And when you're not doing like gnarly off-road terrain trails with super sharp rocks that you're trying to crawl over, it really becomes overkill, in my opinion, if you're trying to air down a little bit more than that. I go to 25 mostly for comfort, actually, because if you're in an off-road trail with running 40 to 50 psi, it's a tough ride.
Oh yeah,
airing
for sure.
down,
You
just
feel
makes
everything.
yeah.
But no, I think 25 is pretty safe. I generally don't recommend anybody going lower than 20 unless you're in sand and you really need it. And yeah, to hit on that point, as you reduce air pressure in your tire is able to support less weight. But we're also talking about off-road. We're not talking about highway speeds. We're not talking about that high rotation. So it doesn't heat up the tire as much as it would. If you were running 25 psi around on the street, there's a lot more friction on the ground running that lower pressure, and your tires would heat up and you'd risk damaging the tire itself, which is why you want to air up once you get back off the trail. But it's a safe bet when you're off-road, and you're, like I said, not usually going fast enough to really worry about heating the tire up. But also, I had a very good visual explained to me one time. And it was like, think about a helium balloon, right? You buy it day one, you could stick it with a blade of grass and it'd pop, right? By day two, the thing, you can push your finger in it and it's totally pliable, right? So you think about a softer tire versus a hard, fully inflated tire, you get a little bit more puncture resistance as you're airing down.